Hey, welcome to the show. Recently on my Instagram, I asked all of you guys if you wanted to hear the biggest mistake that we made in our marriage in the last 5 years while we have walked this road of recovery. You guys that have listened to the podcast, you heard our first episode, you heard our story, you know that we've been through infidelity and betrayal and addiction and been in recovery, what we call recovery, the last 5 years. If you don't know that, you can go back to the first episode and listen. But we started working with a marriage coach 6 months ago now. And Peter is on the show. Welcome, Peter.
Hey, thank you.
But we started working with a marriage coach 6 months ago, which is what has led to so many breakthroughs as far as looking back in the last 5 years and saying, oh, that's what we should have done differently. And you guys said you wanted to hear it. So here we are. We are going to share the biggest mistake that we made the last 5 years in our story. And we're sharing because this is something that will apply whether or not you have a betrayal story, whether or not you've been through something really hard in your marriage is irrelevant. I'm talking to the whole reason we got a coach this year anyways. And that was because, feel free to jump in at any point, by the way, that was because we got to a point of everything being fine. As I like to say, it's fine. How's marriage? It's fine. How are the kids? It's fine, right? You get tired of fine. And we got to this point in our relationship where we weren't growing together. We felt like we were married. We loved our kids. We were good parents. We were awesome business partners.
And we're kind of drifting apart. We're like roommates who are in business together, who have a lot of common themes that the stuff that we do, there's a blah routine, there's a sameness, there's all of that stuff, I'd say.
Totally, but the spark was gone.
Yeah.
The spark was totally gone. And in a lot of ways, we felt like we weren't not only growing together, but we were growing apart. And so I looked at Peter and said, hey, we've been in survival mode the last 5 years because after the bomb went off, there is a period of survival. You're in survival. And after a certain point, you have to know how to get out of survival and get into thriving, where you're actively growing and building something new. And we had never hit that on our own. And with the counseling that we got, it didn't walk us into how to thrive. It only walked us through survival mode.
Well, and I'd like to jump in and say a lot of times when you get counseling, therapy, a lot of that stuff, and I don't want to overgeneralize, but a lot of that focuses on your childhood wounding. It focuses on how you've been wired up until now. It focuses on the things that you have in your life that are problems, conflict in your marriage, etc. Things about, hey, all these things happened to me, or this happened this last week. Oh, what was that big fight you guys just had? Let's hear more about that. That type of thing. Nothing wrong with that. There's a certain amount of focus that you do need to put on an emphasis on that. However, the truth always holds true. What you focus on expands. And when we focus on more conflict, when we focus on things that are going negative, when we focus on that stuff, we're going to keep getting more of that. It just kind of goes hand in glove. That's the truth. It's a law.
Well, and the major difference between therapy and coaching is that therapy focuses on talking about your past, right? Coaching helps you actually reframe the thoughts and the beliefs and move the emotions through your body so that you are no longer reacting from those, so that your thoughts are different, so that you actually process and then reframe and replace those thoughts with thoughts that serve you.
And I think that's a big bombshell realization for me. And I hope that is for a lot of other folks as well. Because when you're dealing with something massively traumatic in your life, I don't care if that was a clown jumping out and scaring you or something a lot more serious, that gets imprinted. That it's like a fingerprint goes in your DNA. It literally goes in this at the cellular, molecular level of your body. And so then purely sitting there and talking about those things or going through some, mental processing or journaling, it'll bring a lot of that stuff to the surface, but then it doesn't really take it away. It's sort of like, if you're going to get the trash out to the curb, but the dump truck doesn't come by to take it away. Well, guess what? It filters back into your house.
So we got a marriage coach in May of this year, and we found him through recommendations, and he's amazing. He's a relationship expert, and we are sitting here right now recording this episode in Austin, Texas, visiting him, doing one of our sessions with him.
In our hotel room.
Yeah, we're in our hotel room. If you're watching on YouTube, we're in our hotel room because if you'll come out to see him, he will do sessions in person. So the way he coaches with us
that was
every
crazy
month,
today, and that was intense, and that was amazing, by the way.
we had our couples session today because the way that he coaches with us every month is he sees us as a couple, and then he sees each of us individually too.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. But the entire point of this show is talking about the big aha moment that we had recently and realizing the biggest mistake we made in our marriage. And the long and short of it is that we moved from a phase 1 relationship to a phase 2 relationship to a phase 3 relationship. I'm cutting right to the chase. There's a lot more to it than this. And what do I mean by that?
We've been reading in the last few months some different books on masculinity and femininity and polarity, and several of those written by an author named David Deida. It's incredible. Intimate Communion, or The Way of the Superior Man, for example. A couple of those books were really massively transformational for me. And I would say very specifically addressing the issue of polarity. Phase 1 relationships are typically you have...
Well, hold on. We better define polarity.
Uh-oh.
Like, what's polarity?
All right. Well, if you think about, let's go back to physics, shall we? In physics, or if you consider a magnet, there's always a North Pole and a South Pole. If you look at our Earth, our planet, you have the North Pole, you have the South Pole. If you have 2 North Poles of a magnet, they're going to repel each other. Same thing with 2 South Poles of a magnet. So there's always, in a relationship, there's always going to be a masculine essence and a feminine essence. I'm not talking about male and female. I'm talking about masculine essence and feminine essence, and they're going to attract each other.
Which is a state of being.
Yeah.
It's not, that's why he's saying it's not male or female, because we all have both. But it's a state of being. And when you guys think about it, when you first met your significant other, and there was that insane attraction, there was that spark, that's because each of you was leaning in to one of those. Each of you was leaning either more into the feminine and the other was the masculine, or vice versa. And it creates friction. It creates spark. And that doesn't go away because people just get to know each other.
Yeah.
It's because we've all seen like couples start to look like each other. Like they start to do all the same things. They go to all the same places. Nothing wrong with that. However, that affects your polarity because now you are showing up in the same essence, the state of being that's very similar, which means there's less attraction, there's less pull.
Another concept that I wanted to just throw in there is when you have people who are doing everything all the time together. So for example, if you're the CFO in our marriage household and you're the mom and you also do stuff in business and all these other things, and I'm looking to you, or vice versa, you're looking to me for various different roles. Next thing you know, we're doing everything mediocre. We're not necessarily thriving at a couple very few small things. So a relationship and polarity and sexual polarity and a lot of these specific things, you can't throw everything and the kitchen sink into a relationship and say, okay, we're going to be exceptional at all the things, because what ends up happening is everything gets watered down. There's only 24 hours in the day. There's only a certain amount that you can focus on with your energy. And so with polarity specifically, that ends up We grow much more together. We become much more friends. And kind of addressing phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 in polarity, if I may. Phase 1 is more of the quote unquote traditional relationship. So if you think about movies from 50 years ago, you had somebody going off to work, typically the man, and he's the provider. He's going to go and earn the money, and then he's going to also expect certain favors and whatever from his wife, who's the woman. She has all these different things, taking care of family, taking care of kids, taking care of all this other stuff, and then she turns around and offers various different things for him. Okay, that's a phase 1, stage 1 relationship.
Think Leave It to Beaver.
Okay.
Haven't you seen that show?
Yeah.
So think Leave It to Beaver, very 1950s. And the reason that actually created more polarity for couples is because...
Well, you had very specific established roles, and you had clear expectations. You had one partner in the relationship. Very specifically, okay, they're the one who earns the income. They're the one who goes and runs the business, all these other things, and you have somebody else who runs all the other stuff.
And it's not about the things they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about, they earned the money and the other one didn't. It's more about, again, the essence behind it, the state of being behind it. And so for the masculine...
Who you identify with, what's your identity there?
What makes someone more masculine?
On the masculinity side of things, there's going to be assertive, there's going to be structure, there's going to be direction, there's going to be a challenge, there's going to be a mission involved, there's going to be very much, if you think about a workplace environment, it's very set up and structured to be masculine. So if you have a presentation, there's going to be bullet points, there's going to be a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's going to be a clear direction. There's going to be a time limit involved. There's going to be deadlines. There's going to be all these things. There's going to be pace. On the feminine side of things, there's flow. There's energy.
There's creativity.
There's spontaneity. There's, again, in the
beauty.
Book. Yeah. In the book, David Deida talks about New York City versus Hawaii. And New York City is a great example of a masculine type of place. And Hawaii is a very great example of a feminine type of place.
It's lush, luxurious. It's very green and fertile and
wet
are growing.
And all these things.
You had to go there.
I
knew
did.
you were going to
You're welcome.
It's
it
also
correct.
Hold on. You're jumping ahead. But with Hawaii, it's also very relaxed. Think pace of life too, right? It's very relaxed. It's very, you can just be how you want to be. People go there because they know how they're going to feel. Mm-hmm. And how they're going to feel is a reflection of more the feminine side, which is relaxed and peaceful and that type of thing. Whereas New York City, go ahead.
Fast-paced. There's massive tall buildings, there's people running everywhere, there's all kinds of specific clear direction. Yes, okay, tall erect buildings, let's go there too. When we look at relationships and phase 1 relationships, and essences, that's where you have 1950s style caricature family. Well, so interesting, phase 2, because for most people that didn't work.
Yeah. And the feminist movement came about as a way to give women more rights and more worthiness.
And we're all a fan of equal pay for equal, equality and all these things. And it's not male, female. Yes.
All of that.
All those things. But what ends up happening is as more women went in the workplace and as more men became less the main provider, now we have 2 income families. Now we have both people going and doing their different roles. You even have plenty of stay-at-home dads, kudos to you guys. But that's where you have a lot of watering down the different essences, the different roles. There's nothing wrong with that. We're not throwing indictments or blaming, but what we are saying is there's very specific roles which we used to have, and now we've come into new relationships.
Because women had to really start using their masculine essence to work, to have rights, to be able to stand up for themselves. So what happens with this situation is that the women, instead of being more in their feminine, or if it's a same-sex couple, right? Or maybe it's reversed. Maybe
Sure.
the woman is the naturally more masculine one anyways, right? Because again, we all have both and it could work for anybody. It's less about the job description. It's more about the state of being, the energy behind it.
Yeah.
So women became more masculine in their approach.
And men became more feminine. So if you
which
think,
meant that we were all sitting here at about 50-50 each of us. So
Yeah.
you're 50% masculine, 50% feminine. I'm 50-50. And that is also reflected in the type of marriage that everybody decided to have in phase 2, which was everything is split 50-50.
fairness, equality. I'm going to do the dishes Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You do them Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, blah, 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 blah. We share stuff with the kids. We're almost taking, we're almost joint in everything. We divide everything equally down the middle. It's fairness, it's equality, it's much more friendship, it's much more emphasis on communication.
Which is all great things, and it's just how we've done our relationship. It just affects your polarity. That's all we're saying with this, is it affects that attraction. There's far less attraction because the state of being. You guys are both very similar in your state of being, as opposed to being opposites. So what's the solution?
Well, you have to still have a strong masculine essence pole and a strong feminine essence pole to attract each other. And if we're stuck in a phase 1 relationship, that works for some people occasionally, provided they don't move and they don't change.
And they're not keeping up with,
and they're not growing. Now, for folks who are now in a stage 2 relationship, now we've got great communication and we're friends and we do a lot of things together and we spend a lot of time together. Again, nothing wrong with that.
But that's what led to us feeling like we're business partners, we're co-parents, we're really good roommates.
Yeah.
But that's it. That doesn't make for a great relationship.
And so it's funny, for the first 5 years of our marriage, we were very much more so a phase 1 relationship. And when we first met, like you were looking for me to retire you from the workforce, from the babysitting line and from Starbucks. And I was looking for someone who would stay at home and play with the kids. And that also played out in our sexuality. It played out in all these things where that's kind of what we were mutually looking for without actually saying it. That's just kind of what our expectations were. Well,
that was reflected because of how we were raised.
Absolutely.
I don't think that was true to who we were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then we went through our story and it way stepped into phase 2.
Absolutely. So then I'm learning about feelings and emotion, and I'm learning about how to communicate better, and I'm learning about all these things, which I'm learning and I'm growing in my femininity, in my feminine essence, which I need to, because we both can have, I can have both masculine and feminine. That's what we do. And same with you.
Yeah. Then I stepped into business. I started growing my business. I started providing too.
So kind of the key out of that is a phase 3 relationship, which is actually, we still have that polarity. We can still have a masculine essence, and I can still, in my case, and again, there are couples where it's completely reversed, and that's okay, whether it's same-sex couples or the male in the relationship, it has more of a feminine essence and the woman has more of a masculine essence. Again, we're not talking gender here. Traditionally, typically in our society, the guy is going to be much more of a masculine essence, and the woman's going to be much more of a feminine essence.
So how do you step into those and create that polarity while still having like an equal relationship?
Well, in our story 5 years ago, when I dove into all these other things, I, in essence, left my masculinity at the door. I thought it was, you know what? I have to get rid of my hobbies. I have to get rid of some of these things. I have to eliminate friendships. I have to do a bunch of these other things because of all the things that we went through. Now, maybe you didn't have that in your marriage, in your relationship, whatever. But it was critical for me to realize I can still be me I can live out of my essence. I can stay true to who I am, and you can stay true to who you are. And that's kind of the spark that we had 13 years ago, even with bypassing those crazy roller coaster waves that we went through. We still have to hold true to that essence. So, for example, on my end, recently I've been learning much more about leadership and confidence and assertiveness and direction and drive and all these things that naturally came natural to me, but I kind of left them at the door. I remember, 5 years ago sitting in our counselor's office going, wait. And I'm thinking this in my mind, like, I'm going to literally have to leave my man card and abdicate that and completely get rid of some of those things. Well, particularly for me, anybody who has a natural masculine essence, when you live out of that and you live from that, we still have connection on all these other areas of our lives that we've built. But now I can still live out of that assertiveness, direction, drive, confidence, etc. And the flip side for you.
Well, that was advice that we were given. First of all, I was gonna say, and part of that was accurate and true for a while.
Yeah.
Right? When you go through the story that we went through, there was a season that you did need to
absolutely
just be home. Like you did need to just be focused on providing and then serving the family and quote unquote giving up your man card. I think looking back, you could have still given up those things while maintaining a masculine essence.
Yeah.
So I don't think, again, it was about the things per se. I think it was
it's how I viewed them.
It's how you viewed it 100%.
Yeah.
And so because of that, it became whatever Joy says goes, which put me into having to be the decision maker, having to be the one that had the purpose, having to be the one that had the vision, having to be the one that's
direction and drive and all these things.
Which is all masculine energy, which again is fine. It just totally removed any kind of polarity for us because I am someone who's more naturally feminine and I can do the masculine very well. But it really drains me. It makes me really tired. It exhausts me. And then I look at you and I'm like, well, why don't you step up and be the man? Right? Yeah. Like it almost leads to some sort of disdain, I think, for wives when they look at their husband, they're like, I'm sitting here doing all the work. Like you step up and be the man.
And on my end, there's nothing wrong with getting great at doing the dishes and taking care of household chores and being a great baby wrangler and all the other things, learning better about communication and learning about empathy and all these other things that are critical for all of our journeys. We each have to develop different areas of our lives. I just think that on my end, having to, or at least this is part of my inner shame and inner wounding, which kind of came out later. We don't know what we know until we look back and say, oh, wow, that was that. Looking back on it, I definitely see there was some moments where I could have absolutely, instead of going, well, you know what? I'm just going to completely, even little things like we're going to go to eat. I don't know, baby, whatever you want. Well, that doesn't help because there's a lot of times when you're actually genuinely saying, you know what, I'm kind of wanting to relax into my femininity right now. And this is at a very subconscious level in a relationship. Right? And I'd love to hear what you're saying. Well, I'm not going to even have a vote. I got so good at abdicating that I didn't even genuinely know. I didn't have an opinion because I left it at the door so long ago when I lived from that place of just whatever I got to do to make Joy happy, which isn't really masculine and it's not really living from my true essence because I do have opinions. I do have things that are important to me, as do you.
So kind of the whole point of this is that now you know if you want to turn me on, if you want, if you're like, you know what, I want to have Joy be in love with me and Joy feel crazy about me. Or if I'm like, hey, I want the spark back in our relationship. I don't want to say how to handle me, but you basically know, you know how to show up in such a way because we've been studying this and we've been given the language for it. And okay, I need to show up calling the shots. I need to show up with direction and purpose
And I'm gonna flesh that out a little bit.
Yeah.
So a lot of that is actually involves taking care of things that need to be taken care of. So there's things like, okay, did I pay the electricity bill? Well, that's actually a masculine essence type thing. Getting chores done, making lists
That's
and
right.
checking boxes and making sure that everything's taken care of. There's things, okay, taking out the trash, doing things that are necessary and needed, which is awesome. That's great. Interestingly enough, when you dive into more of the study on masculine essence and feminine essence, the feminine, if left to herself, typically lacks direction. You'll feel lost. You won't know. Like you'll have all of this energy and all of this flow and all of these feelings and all these things, but then you actually you crave some type of framework.
Structure.
Yeah. And the masculine, left to the masculine strictly, will always be forever rigid and lists and endless to-dos and literally work themselves into a hole. And so that's where it's really fascinating how your polar opposite is the one that actually really attracted you from day one, from the first place.
And probably why you find other people in public attractive. I think that's a huge thing, is like your marriage gets to this point where you're like, there's not the spark here anymore, but I feel it with other people.
Yeah.
Well, it's because they're showing up in a strong essence that causes you to relax into yours. You guys didn't know this, but if you show up really strong in one of yours, in your essence, so for me, it's my feminine, it will help you automatically start showing up more masculine and vice versa.
Yeah.
So you can help each other that way too.
And there was actually this really cool part in the book where, okay, in this case, the guy is living from his masculine essence and the wife in that instance was living from her feminine essence. Well, she had the higher earning job. She was the one who's making the money and earning the income and all these things. Well, in that scenario, she's done with work. She's been working all day. She's been wrangling with people constantly. And the guy, in this case, has the choice. Okay, so whoa, she's been living in her masculine all day. What does he typically want to do? He's going to typically want to abdicate his masculinity. It's either, because again, magnets repelling each other if two North Poles are pushing on each other. So he's going to either become less masculine, or he can say, you know what? I'm actually step fully into my essence and be more masculine in my essence to allow her to relax into her feminine.
That's how, because Peter has to do this to me now. That's how to get a woman to relax more into her feminine is for the man. Again, we're stereotyping these roles, but they don't have to be. Is for the man to come in even more masculine. So if she's really in her masculine because of something, the best way to get her out of it is for the man to come in even more strong. She's been
in this all day. She's been, dealing with clients and dealing with stuff or dealing with work or all these things. She would actually really genuinely love to relax and take a bubble bath and, or watch a show or do something fun, sit and relax on the couch, whatever, to be able to relax into her masculinity. And sometimes, to relax in her femininity. And
this is how it works, you guys. This is how the spark comes back, because when I've been working all day and I've been like grinding and I'm like, you don't even realize, because it's mostly subconscious, right? So it's not like a conscious thing in front of your mind.
And you're on your phone dealing with client stuff, and you have all these lists going on, and you have all this stuff. And then I go and I turn some music on, and I come up and I grab you and I swirl you around the room and I dance with you.
Well, yeah. Or you're like, go get your butt in the bath. Put down your phone. You're not on your phone anymore. Like, I'm cooking dinner, you're taking a bath, I've got the kids, blah, blah, blah. The reason that works as like a turn on is not just because they're stepping in and like doing acts of service, right? Like we always talk about the 5 love language. Well, we don't, but other people do talk about the 5 love languages.
There's clear direction. There's clear purpose.
Correct. It's the essence behind it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that's the big thing. That's our big aha moment from the last 5 years. The biggest thing that we'd love to reinforce is, all right, 5 years ago, we did need to focus on a lot of things that were broken. We did need to focus on, hey, wow, we went off the rails in a big way. And what are we going to do about that? And we have to assess the damage. We have to assess, hey, these are all the things that we don't want to be doing in our lives. These are all the things that happened to us. These are all the stuff. This is the stuff from our past that we need to flush out of the closet and get it out there. Now, if you stay in that place, you're going to gradually become roommates who share a bank account and share kid responsibilities. And everything becomes that level 2, phase 2 relationship where everything's 50-50 and there's not the spark back. Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with that, because there are actually relationships that work that way. Everybody wants to focus on communication and great friendship and all those things. And there's nothing wrong with that. But for most people that have a strong masculine essence and other people that have a strong feminine essence, the polarity is what keeps the spark there.
So basically, our biggest mistake was kind of twofold, I see. One, I mean, we didn't know about this. So there's like no way we could have known.
You don't know what you don't know.
No, and I wish we had known about this from like day one, right? Mm-hmm. But I think the other thing was that we kept showing up, creating a marriage, creating a life from the past.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is we kept showing up and saying, well, because this thing happened, because of X, Y, and Z, that means we have to do this, this, and this, or we are doing this, and
then we're perpetually stuck in the survival mode. We're perpetually stuck with our boat taking on water. We're always trying to bail out of a tough situation. And again, what we focus on expands.
Well, and survival mode is living in a state of reaction to the past. It doesn't matter if the past was yesterday or 5 years ago. You're still saying, hey, this thing happened, therefore this is the next step. And you cannot get to a place of thriving when you are creating from a vision of the past. Mm-hmm. And you can't create a new future when, again, you are showing up creating based on the past. And we do this all the time. People do this all the time.
So practicals on that. A lot of times I would go around saying, you know what? I'm not my dad. I'm a different person. I am not doing activities which are harmful for us. I am not X, Y, and Z. We're not going to be stuck in debt anymore. We're going to get out of various different things that have been holding us hostage. Well, guess what? Focusing on what I don't want, focusing on being stuck, that I don't want to be stuck. I don't want us to be held hostage by all these situations. Guess what happens? You still keep getting more of the same. I become the things I'm trying to quickly avoid not being. Very, very similar to if you walked into a dark room and you say, I don't want to see shadows. I don't want to see shadows. I'm going to chase these shadows out. I'm going to chase these shadows. Well, guess what? You're going to keep on finding more and more shadows, and there's a bunch of bumps and bruises all over your body because you've been hurting yourself. Versus, what do I want to focus on? Flip a light switch on and see that's what I want to go towards. And so for us, like, we've had some of these light bulb moments very recently. It's been really cool to experience things that we actually really want to hold on to and run towards. Some specifics in my life, things like meditation, actually stopping everything and really, really thinking about, what do I want the future to be? Calm the crazy mind waves down long enough to actually relax into who I am. Affirmation statements and a really cool journaling process, which I came up with, where you can actually go through a process, not just staying stuck in this is where I'm at, but what's the direction? Where do I want to actually go? Where do I see us going? Where do I want us to be?
And again, I think so many people have a hard time even asking that question because they go, well, we haven't been able to do this or we haven't been able to do that. And right there, you're already looking at the past to justify a dream. And the future has to be something completely different than your past, right? If you're constantly looking at the past, you're never going to create something different. And so it has to be during visualization and meditation. You have to take time for that every single day to allow yourself to dream. You have to let yourself dream. You have to let yourself actually imagine something completely different. And there's a time and a place for all of it, right? There was a time and a place for survival mode. And then there was a time and a place for processing and feeling the emotions, because you can't skip that stage either, right? You can't just be like, oh, I don't want to think about the past.
I'm just going to
focus on the future. Like, no, that's bypassing, right? You have to process the emotions, which we've done, I mean, like a crap ton of that over the last 6 months. And I thought we had already done that the last 5 years, but there's been a crap ton of that. And then at the same time, learning how to let yourself dream again, picture a new future, start working on a new future, asking better questions like, who do I want to be? Not, oh my gosh, who do I not want to be? Right? What marriage do we want to have? Not what happened to us. Therefore, I guess it's never going to happen. Because I think I subconsciously really felt like, because we've been through this hard thing, that means we're always going to be in recovery. We're always going to have this thing kind of to look out for. I also think like the common belief out there with marriage is hard, right? Everybody says like, we know marriage is hard.
Yeah.
I disagree with that belief now. And I think that automatically taints the vision that you try to dream for.
There's this negative cloud hanging over you all the time. And I know for me, I was like, I'm always going to be living in shame. I'm always going to be living in guilt. I'm the guy who messed up and ruined everything. And then guess what? Now my true essence, the essence of who I am is always clouded with all this negativity. And I'm not able to actually run towards what I'm really going for.
Yeah, letting yourself create that vision of the future. But there are stages and seasons for all of it.
Absolutely.
But more people than not need to, if they would like to create something different, get to that place of creating a future, not based on the past, but based on who they want to be and the marriage they want to create and the life they want to create. And I think that's been our biggest aha we thought we would share with you guys. If you want to look up anything else about masculine and feminine stuff, because we are not experts, this is just huge aha moments that we've had recently. David Deida is the author. There's a book called The Way of the Superior Man. And then there's another one called Intimate Communion. And they're both really helpful. If you thought this podcast was helpful, you would love the books. It'll give you awesome language, especially with your spouse, so that you guys can be on the same page with that together.
Thanks for having me on again, baby. Appreciate that.
All right, you guys. I hope you loved this episode. If you have any other questions or you want anything answered on the show, send me a DM on Instagram. It's joyharrington.ig. And if you could take a couple seconds, give me a quick 5-star review, maybe share this with a friend or take a screenshot, tag me on your Instagram stories and tag both of us actually. Tell us what you loved about this episode. We love hearing your feedback. We love hearing that it's making a difference in someone else's life. So go have a beautiful day, everybody. We'll see you guys on the next one.